All right, everyone. So my name is Allan Tucker. For my internship, I spent my time at the UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, Office of Sustainability. I'm currently a student there. I'm a chemical engineering major. So let me tell you a little about the University of Illinois at Chicago, Office of Sustainability. The Office of Sustainability basically coordinates and does planning throughout the university with all the sustainability and the recycling efforts throughout campus. And you can see they have done extensive work, lots of work, to really reduce the environmental impact of the university. And so for my internship, my focus was on cardboard recycling throughout the whole campus, but especially at Student Center East and at the University of Illinois Medical Center. And of course, I made observations campus-wide. So what would happen at Student Center East is that when the cardboard boxes arrive, of course, they go to the employees, whoever it is, the students or the vendors. Eventually, they break down those boxes and it's passed along to the building service workers who would then take those boxes and put them into the cardboard compactor. Now, the main problem with this process is not so much the pathway between the students and the vendors and the building service worker or the building service worker to the compactor. It's actually the compactor itself. And so I'll be talking throughout this presentation to show you ways that we can improve the compactor. What would happen is that the employees, the students, and the vendors would not break down their boxes. It would take lots of space when these boxes end up in the compactor, and eventually over time, the compactor gets full. And when it's full, the workers have no other choice because there's a rule that says they can't leave boxes on the dock. They have no choice but to throw it into the trash stream. And so I'll be looking at just a few points on compactor maintenance, pressure gauge sensors, and just basic education and policy that can be implemented in that building. So compactor maintenance. So you can actually see what I mean by the boxes were not being compacted properly. This is at the time, this was 5 a.m. at Student Center East. Just to do the pickup, I went along with the cardboard truck to see their process and how they collect their cardboard. And you can see there's no sign that it was compacted. You would expect that there would at least be a breakdown in the boxes, but this was not the case. And so I discovered that this compactor has been there for quite a while. It's a very old compactor and it's had very little maintenance. Now, every time the cardboard driver picks up the cardboard, he records how much cardboard he estimates is in the compactor. He has estimated, every time he picked up, usually, about 18 yards of cardboard every time he picks up. And usually the cardboard compactor is completely full. Now, when you look at the spec sheet for the compactor, the actual compacted cardboard it's supposed to be when it's full is actually 28 yards, which means you're missing out every time this compactor is full, you're missing out on a potential 10 yards of cardboard. Using their estimation ratio, it's about 500 pounds of cardboard every single time they do a pickup. And so it has the potential over a year to capture 65 tons of cardboard. And by diverting that cardboard from the waste stream into the recycling stream, you'll be able to save $2,730 just in tipping fees when they deliver the cardboard to the landfill. And by doing maintenance, it would generate, after it goes to the recycling stream, $650 in revenue. Right now, the rate is about $10 per ton of cardboard in the recycling stream. So speaking with some vendors to see what was the sort of cost it would be to maintain a cardboard compactor, he said it would take no more than about $300 just for labor, just for the guy to sit there and go through, and this is the hourly rate. And parts, and this is a very generous price, he said it would be about $2,000 for the most expensive part. So over time, you see that there is only a payback of about 6 to 7 months if you're able to maintain this cardboard compactor. Of course, you reduce carbon emissions by about 203 metric tons if that cardboard ends up in the recycling stream. So my next idea, and this is also to tackle the sort of fulling problem, and I got this idea from the ISTC, the Illinois Sustainability Technology Center, and it was a pressure gauge sensor. One of the companies that does this is OnePlus Corporation, which is actually based right here in Illinois, Northbrook. What this does is it would observe the temperature, measure the pressure within the compactor during the day as it fills up, and when it notices that it's full, it would send an email to the UIC Transportation Department, and they would hear, okay, it's full, let's send someone out there to empty it. And so when you're able to empty it, you automatically reduce the amount of cardboard that the building service worker would throw into the trash simply because it's full. And looking through the data at that building, I saw about 177 tons within a year were ending up within the trash stream. It's also good to note that at UIC they use MRF, it's a material recovery facility, which actually takes the trash and then it would separate out the trash and take out the recyclables, and they would report back the data to UIC. And that's part of what the UIC Sustainability Office does, Office of Sustainability does. And so by doing this, by capturing this extra 177 tons of cardboard, they're able to save $7,434 in just billing in cardboard going towards the waste stream. This, of course, would produce $1,770 in revenue at a rate of about $10 per ton again, and reduce the carbon emissions by about 522 tons. And so I left this point for last because I still find that this is a very important point. Educational policy. What the UIC Office of Sustainability tries to do is to implement policy and planning into the running of the university to make the university a more sustainable environment. And so I believe that, for example, UIC office employees, when they hire someone new, I used to work for the mechanical engineering department at the university. We had to basically do a test, not so much a test, but like an informational online thing, and then do a short quiz afterwards. And for the environmental health. It was for safety, environmental health and safety department. And basically, if we're able to incorporate a sort of short informational feature into new hires, their process, it would at least give them a head start towards helping them do the right thing. And that's actually one of the things that has been sort of preached to me at the office, is that, if you're able to make things easy for people to do the right thing, they're most likely do the right thing. And so vendor policies, every time there's a new vendor, we have Dunkin' Donuts, Wendy's, all the big ones. And every time a new vendor comes to sell, they have to sign policy saying that this is how they're going to run their business at the university. And so if we're able to incorporate the sustainability effort, recycling processes into their policy, we'll definitely at least be able to guide them in the right direction. And students, of course, the Office of Sustainability has been working extensively in trying to spread this information to students. And this is an ongoing process that the office is currently doing. Okay, the next building that I had focused on was University of Illinois Medical Center. And so within the medical center, there are two major parts that produce the most cardboard. And this is materials management. Every single thing that comes in for operating rooms, for the care of the patients, comes to materials management. And there's also the University of Illinois Medical Center Cafeteria Kitchen, which gets a lot of their packages, their food, in boxes. And then I will go on to speak about the two other recycling areas within the medical center, which is bottles and cans, and the plastic wrappings. So materials management. So the director invited me to go to materials management to just kind of observe what their process is for handling the boxes when they come in. And I found that two different sets of workers handle incoming packages at the same time. The first ones are the stock workers and the process technicians. Now, stock workers, their job was to basically maintain the amount of medical supplies on the separate floors. And the process technicians, their actual job is not so much to do that, but to handle the tools for the surgeons before they end up in the operating room. And so the difference between the way these two parties handle the boxes was that the stock workers, this is the way they left their boxes when they were done. And Student Center East and the hospital are very similar in terms of their amount of cardboard generated, just because they're very high traffic buildings. And so the stock workers piled high, right? While the process technicians actually took their time out, took out their knife, cut down the boxes, made everything flat. And it worked well for them over time. But unfortunately, fortunately, I should say, over time now, it's just instituted about at the end of last month. They have a system where the packages they order go to a separate facility. And this separate facility then takes everything out of these boxes and then puts them in rubber buckets, really, and brings them to the hospital. And they recycle everything that they unwrap. And so really, as time goes by, I haven't seen any data yet since it's only started the end of last month. As time goes by, there's going to be really no boxes produced in that facility, in the materials management anyway. And so, I was just one of my simple recommendations is that you can actually, since there won't be as much cardboard, I mean, this is a big part of the cardboard you produce, they have the option to remove that compactor and place it in another area where it's needed, another high traffic area. And so the next area, which I spoke briefly on just now, is the cafeteria kitchen. Now, in the kitchen, there's a very straightforward waste process. I want you to remember this picture. That's the picture of behind the kitchen where there are two black bins. And these black bins, according to the environmental services, they cater to everything, right? They cater to the boxes, they cater to bottles and cans, they cater to every bit of recycling. Anything that comes out of the hospital ends up in these two black boxes, except the hazardous waste and I think paper shredding, yes, for your important documents. Everything else ends up in these two bins. And so what I saw is that there was no clear recycling procedure. There wasn't any boxes and any bins behind the kitchen to say, bottles and cans only, a blue bin, or a tote for cardboard. There was just none of that. And so one of the things I will go into is a new science and just training for the workers, and possibly just separating and making separate bins for certain things. Yes. So one of the things, another trip I took was with the bottles and cans truck recycling at UIC. And what I found when I arrived at the hospital, when I opened the bottles and cans bins, there was no bottles and cans. And that pickup at that facility is once a week. So in my mind, it's, a whole week, and a place does not have generated any bottles and cans for a whole week, especially that they have a cafeteria, is sort of a little off. So on further investigation, I found out that what happens is that the building service worker would take the bottles and cans and the trash from the cafeteria area, carry it downstairs to the same big black bins behind the kitchen, and they would dispose everything there, and then they expected someone else to come and then separate it out for them. And so And so what I did after noticing this, and it, of course, it never got separated, was that I spoke with them at the environmental services in the hospital, and I asked them to simply put a blue bin behind the kitchen to see what happens. And this is without any education or any prodding, telling them you got to do this, right? And what we saw happen is that this is actually June week 4. We saw that they put that in just before the June week 4 pickup. And what we see now is that there's been more consistent rate at which bottles and cans have been coming in at the hospital, which when you look at before, you'd see a big spike, and then 2 weeks, there would be nothing. And so actually where that big spike is from is that on the separate floors, there are bins, there are blue totes that after the patients get their food, and then they take the recycling, those would fill up eventually. And then when they're all filled up, they were all carried together down to the recycling dock, and they're all picked up together. So really, if I got one more week of data, I'm actually expecting to see a big spike again, because that did not change. And so when I used those 4 weeks to compare to the previous 4-week periods, I saw a 92% increase in recycling of bottles and cans in that building. Another huge thing, which luckily for me, I got the opportunity to go into one of the nurses' stocking rooms, was plastic wrappings and film. Everything that a hospital uses, everything that comes in those boxes for materials management are wrapped in plastic film. What that means is because they're trying to make sure that every item that comes in is sterilized, which is about fair. But the problem there is that within that stocking room, there is one bin, and that bin collects just waste. And when I looked into the bin, everything in there was just plastic, and this is all going to the trash stream, which I didn't find, good. When I spoke to environmental services, the problem was, of course, space. Space is always a problem, and so I noticed that, and I did some research. I found online that there's something, I didn't know that you have these for your homes. At least I can buy one for my home now. There's a plastic bag holder. You can just simply hang it over the top of your bin, and it would hold 50 plastic bags. And my goal there is to say that if every single nurse that unwraps something to use in her operating room puts those plastic bags, it's definitely opportunity for revenue, because this is currently the highest rate I've ever seen recycling transfer stations selling accepting plastic for. They're $100 per ton they would give the university simply for their plastic. I have no idea how much. I wasn't able to gather how much they would generate in a week's time. But I estimate I really do think it's going to be a lot. I actually wasn't able to do that because I'm not actually supposed to be in those rooms. Yeah. So the cost to implement this project is $254.93. And where I got this from is that every floor has one of these stocking rooms. And so for just one for each floor at $15 a piece, it comes up to an amount. And then I made sure I put in a tarp to keep the plastic contained in the trunk. I hope to encourage them to utilize the bottles and cans truck, which is an open top container. It's usually not that full, and we actually saw it at, you remember, our training week when we went to the landfills, and to prevent things from blowing away, during the wind, paper and stuff, they would have a tarp covered over the waste. And so I utilized that concept to just factor in the cost of a tarp to just place on top of the recyclables. And the reason for that is there's also some good other reasons in that the truck drivers expressed to me they have problems during bad weather, snow, rain. He would have to shovel all the snow out from behind his truck to just take out the plastic bottles. And so hopefully that'll help them do their job much easier. Okay. So campus-wide, one of the things going around in the cardboard trucks I noticed was that there are very poor signs or mixed signage or just absolutely no signs on the containers. And you can see here, and this is on a cardboard container, it says recycle only, clean paper, cardboard, newspapers, bottles, and cans. Now, if those bottles and cans have water inside and they end up in the container, or let's say there's any bit of oil, they run the risk of damaging the cardboard within there. So that's something I looked at, and of course the contamination will be featured. So one of the things I did is I placed 2 new signs at Student Center West and at the UIC College of Dentistry. And so I made these 2 signs, went out there, stick it up some tape, survived a couple nights, right? And I went back later to observe to see if there was any change. And this is without me telling them, okay, I put up these new signs, follow them. And so this is before, I don't know if you can see too well, my kind of signs trying to cover over the old paper signs. And this is not for paper, it's actually for cardboard. And this is a picture of the recyclables inside the bin. And so a week later, I went back and I checked it out. And you can actually see the cardboard in the bin is actually been has been flattened by the building service workers. I did the same at College of Dentistry. There you see my new sign. Everything that's in the bin is boxed up. And when that bin fills up, and they only had 2 small bins, they had no other choice but to throw the cardboard into the trash stream. And so, of course, there's contamination, there's styrofoam, there's all sorts of paper in there roundabout. And a week later, when I came back, I was actually shocked to see everything in there were all flat. And there was very little, there's probably like a Dunkin' Donuts cup in there. Cardboard, there's no contamination within the stream. Actually, when I discussed this, I came across a building service worker and I asked them, why was this the case, right? I told them what I was doing and they said, well, I actually thought those signs were put up by my supervisor, right? And so, just without any sort of prodding, if you make things right, to just remind them, people will do the right thing. And so I actually went and looked at the data. The Office of Sustainability collects a lot of data. That's a major thing. And week 21 is when, pickup 21 is when I put in the sign. For Student Center West, you don't really see a difference in the amount of cardboard. You might just see a little fluctuation, and then it sort of levels off and becomes consistent. And this was the case beforehand. But at College of Dentistry, you can see that at week 21, it immediately, even though it dropped, you got a certain consistency, and that's necessary. Why I do believe that this is so high is that the truck drivers, when they saw all the boxes piled up high, unflattened, they just assumed that the bins were full and just gave it a high rating. While everything was flattened, they dropped their numbers because it wasn't as, to them, eyesight, it wasn't as tall in size. Contamination. There are a few locations on campus where there are really a high level of contamination. Particularly one that was very big was the architecture building, because they used paint and glass and all sorts of things in their projects. Now, when you put all these things in the cardboard container and they're picked up by the cardboard truck, you put at risk every single 4 to 6 tons of cardboard in that container, to go to the landfill. If only some paint or oils or whatever they may be using in that building ends up on the cardboard immediately, even though the university gets paid for that. When it gets to the transfer station and they see these things, it immediately gets sent to the landfill, which actually the transfer station doesn't want and we don't want. So my idea was to, instead of collecting that cardboard, the truck driver should have the option to give a call back to the supervisors, send them a picture because they have some nice phones, and tell them basically there's too much contamination. within this. If it's about 80% contaminated, I would say that is just a bit too much. And you could be risking all this cardboard. So instead of him picking it up, and I know the cardboard truck runs before the trash truck, instead of him picking it up, the trash truck can simply pick that up along with his usual pickup. And so other observations, I just want to touch on something that's not here. I noticed just lately, I was telling Mrs. Shida that I was looking at the data, and I noticed that only 46 buildings on campus, there are pickups for cardboard, which to me, for a school that's about, I think it's 244 acres of Chicago land, that seemed a little small to me. And so actually this morning before we came, I counted out all the buildings on university campus, and it's about 122 buildings. And so roughly about a third of the buildings only collect cardboard. Then I looked at the data from a building that there's no cardboard collection, and I saw that about 15% of their waste is actually cardboard. And so if you're able to capture all those extra streams of cardboard, that it will increase the cardboard collection, reducing the amount they pay for landfill costs, and increasing their revenue, making recycling a much easier, cheaper process for the university. And I found some, just going around, I found some unused recycling containers that were just sitting there, and which can be used in certain areas. Like this is actually the OIC circle, which they have all the Wendy's and students eat their foods. Okay, acknowledgements. I really have to thank the Office of Sustainability and Mr. Reese and the EPA for allowing me to do this. I have too many people to thank because everyone sort of helped me and supported me throughout this project. Those are the hospital and those, it's just too many to mention. And so I just want to thank you all for having me. So any questions?
Yeah, those pressure transducers that you had on the cardboard recycler.
Yeah.
How many of those are you going to have to buy? Or?
I was only thinking for Student Center East at the time. Since the hospital, they're greatly reducing the amount of cardboard they're getting. So it's only going to be one, and it costs about $4,660. Yeah, and that's about a payback of 6 to 7 months. Sorry, I didn't mention that. Yes.
You said the hospital is going to like a centralized distribution facility.
Yeah. So they're ordering their items from the supplier, and then the supplier, instead of sending it straight to the university, which they usually did, it sends it to another facility, which then unpackages everything, takes everything out, puts them in buckets. Then that facility takes all the cardboard, everything that was in the package, and puts it in the recycling stream. Yes, and then they would transport those items over to the hospital in just some rubber buckets, which they then reuse. Yeah. Any other questions?
As far as your labeling goes, are you going to? Are they going to do that campus wide?
I was actually working with who was it, Mr. Sandeep? Yes, just last week we spoke, and he told me that just to give him an idea of how many places would need these signs, and my estimate, looking at the number of buildings, was about 46 buildings would need these signs, and he actually wanted my input on a sort of an app they want to use to help collection of data. So hopefully. So about 46 buildings, roughly.
Well, look on some of those containers that even though you had put your signage on there was a lot of superfluous information on there that probably needed to be scraped off or, just kind of blacked out so you didn't see what else was there.
No, I some of the other signs, I don't know if let's see if you can go back to it. Or actually just don't put any black bags here. The main one was the big paper sign that I tried to cover over, but my sign wasn't big enough, unfortunately. And there was a sort of a sign that was, I think, paper only just underneath there. So I just try to cover it up. It's a toast sign. This is actually another one of my signs here that said please flatten boxes, to encourage them to flatten boxes. And how the dock worked is that the door was probably over here, and then they'd walk in. So I put it in a way that they would actually see the signs, as they approach the compactor, and well, we saw some results. So I think that was a change, but I tried my best to cover up as many signs as possible. Okay, any other questions? All right.